Hello, I am Owen Rooks, and today we'll be talking about the Civilian Conservation Corps for History 202 for Kurt Troutman, Muskegon Community College. For a little bit of background, on Black Tuesday, 1929, the Great Depression would ravage the world. It would start in the United States and move on from there. Stock market would crash, and this would lead to mostly everyone being unemployed or underemployed. This image on our right here shows a family on Christmas. This is their Christmas dinner. It consists of, well, almost nothing, and it looks like the man might be cutting up what might be a potato. The family looks underdressed and dirty. FDR, the president at the time, would enact a New Deal. This would include many banking reforms and acts such as the Social Security Act. However, the one that we will be talking about the most today will be the CCC, or the Civilian Conservation Corps. The Civilian Conservation Corps would begin in 1933. It would originally recruit men 18 to 25, but later move on to 17 to 28. It would be run almost military like, with Army officers from the reserve running the CCC, and Douglas MacArthur at its head. The typical enrollee would consist of an unmarried man who was also unemployed, 18 to 25 years old. Each had to pass a physical exam, and you were required to serve at least 6 months, all the way out to 2 years. The benefits of being in the CCC. Along with $30 pay for a month, which in today's money is about $560, you would also get to send home about $22 a month to your family and other dependents, which is about $460 to $500. Among these, you would also get housing, which was a major amenity at the time as rarely people could afford it. Food, again, rarely people could afford it, and this was free. Clothing, and medical care. And you'll see in this photo here on the right, this is a CCC mess hall. One of the things that you'll note is that there are blacks cooking with whites. The CCC would partake in various kinds of different work, ranging all the way from structural improvements, such as building bridges, improving bridges, roads, highways, even airports with the transportation, to erosion control and flood control, such as building dams, irrigation, the ditches on the side of the road to keep water from overflowing the road, forest culture. This is an interesting one because you can still see it today. These trees that are planted in rows like this, that you may come upon on your travels, were most likely planted upon by the CCC. Trees obviously don't grow naturally in this nature. Trees don't drop their seeds like this. The CCC would plant these trees to rejuvenate forests, or where they had just cut down trees. They would also partake in landscape and recreation services, such as building state parks and building new areas on these state parks for buildings. This would also be clearing land for the state parks and clearing areas for people to swim at lakes and other water recreation sports. They would even partake in mosquito control, which would be basically fogging mosquitoes so that they wouldn't be able to breathe the air and die. Just to show some of the work the CCC may partake in, here's an image of CCC workers building a pavilion. You notice that there's quite a few of them working on one job. This makes the work quicker and easier. This is a pavilion, most likely on a hiking trail or in a state park somewhere just for quick rest. And this is pretty common for most CCC jobs. It'll be state park or public buildings and infrastructure. Here we have CCC men planting large rows of pine trees, and this will lead to the tree rows that we see today when we're traveling up north. Here we have CCC workers most likely suppressing either a wildfire or helping control a controlled burn using a hose. Now, among some of the other things that the CCC would do, they would also provide some classes. Obviously, some of the jobs that they need to do would revolve around mechanics and other similar things. So here it seems to be a class of talking about the combustion engine, and these CC workers are most likely going to be working on building engines or working on engines in some form or of another. And of course, classes could range between a variety of different things, as the CCC, again, did do a variety of different jobs. Classes could range all the way from maybe even chemical classes, dealing with controlled burns and other fire retardants, all the way down to easier high school level classes, as maybe some of the men don't have a diploma or haven't graduated high school yet. This here is a train of new enrollees leaving to their new life as a CCC member. You can see that they are very happy as they are about to receive pay for the first time in about 4 years. This is what a typical CCC camp would look like. Each camp would normally be located somewhere where conservation work would need to be done. And you'll notice that there aren't very many buildings. There's two large ones on the left side. That is most likely an administration building and a mess hall. The rest of the buildings are tents. This is where the CCC enrollees and members would sleep, as this was done a very, again, militaristic style. You'll notice too there are a few outhouses and other storage buildings in the background. The CCC would also offer other activities for when you're not working, such as playing pool or joining in a band. Minorities were allowed in the CCC, however, segregation was common between blacks and whites in the camps, as the CCC was very rooted in Southern culture, as there was a lot of conservation work to be done there. This was required. There was a Native American division, and Native Americans were allowed to join. However, they had to be recognized as a federal tribe, meaning the government must recognize them and allow them to join. About 15,000 Native Americans would join. And you'll see here in this image, this is an entirely black portion of a CCC camp. They even have what looks like their own band, as shown in the previous image, an all-white band. Of course, all good things must come to an end. The CCC never was meant to be a permanent organization, and would face a massive decline at the beginning of World War II. Most of its members, and men that age, would begin to enroll in the branches of the U.S. Armed Forces, joining the Navy or the Army, and going to fight abroad in World War II. Shortly before its entire dissolution, though, the CCC would change its main objective from more so conservation work to building defenses and other defensive structures in case the US was ever invaded during World War II. Eventually, the CCC would cease funding on June 30th, 1942, and fully dissolve. The use of the camps after is interesting. It would house people under the Enemy Alien Control Act. So basically, Japanese US citizens would be rounded up and brought into basically our own US version of a concentration camp because we thought that they might be spies. It also served for civilian public service. Groups of conscientious objectors to the war being able to not serve in the war itself, but serve at home for the war effort. On the bottom left is just an image of what a CCC camp may look like, and on the right side is a CCC enlistment poster. Now again, the CCC was an amazing opportunity. As the poster says, this was a young man's opportunity for work, play, study, and health. This poster is specifically from Illinois. Going to the point of health, the job was looked at as a healthier option of a career. You were going outside and doing mostly physical labor, building structures, planting trees, doing physical work outside. This was a healthier job. You were getting physically active. Study, again, because the CCC would offer classes. Play, because you were able to meet new people and you were offered other activities than just work when you weren't working. And again, work. Most importantly, work. You were making a wage in a time where making a wage was almost non-existent. For my interview, I talked to a man named Matt Moore. Matt Moore is a museum curator and handyman for the Lakeshore Museum Center here in Muskegon. He and I talked mostly about the CCC's involvement in the Muskegon area, and specifically Muskegon State Park. The state park would be used by the CCC to make work. Basically, the CCC enrollees spent time planting trees and clearing most of the campsites that we know today. The blockhouse that we know and love today was not actually the original. The original was created by the CCC. The original blockhouse was built out of old sailing ship timbers, going back in Muskegon's heritage. The original blockhouse was sadly burnt down in 1962 by a group of 6 youths. The youths, when questioned why, gave a simple answer. It was Tuesday night and we were bored. As part of their punishment, the youths were required to help rebuild the second blockhouse, ironically enough. The blockhouse that we have nowadays is a recreation that stands exactly where the old one did. And on the right hand side here, you can see the original blockhouse shortly before it was burned down, and on the left hand side, you can see the 6 youths. Sadly, this has been happening again recently. People have been trying to burn down the blockhouse for whatever reason, we don't really know. This here is my list of sources. This top one is a JSTOR source, and was mostly about what the CCC camps were used after the CCC disbandment. This second one was also about the CCC and is a JSTOR source. This third one is about the Indian Division in the CCC. This third one, Projects in Ann Arbor, talks a little bit about the blockhouse and the surrounding area of Ann Arbor. This third one I used mostly for photos, and this last one I used also for photos.